My name is Claire Pemberton, and 3 days ago, my 8-year-old daughter did something that still takes my breath away. I'm sitting here in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I frosted 30 cupcakes for her birthday party, where I carefully arranged pink roses in vases, where I told myself this time would be different with my mother-in-law. But I was wrong. What Dorothy did at that party was unforgivable. What Hazel did in response, that was pure brilliance. Picture this. 20 guests in our backyard, children laughing, adults chatting over lemonade, and my daughter Hazel standing in front of her birthday cake with pure joy on her face. She'd been counting down to this moment for weeks. 8 candles flickered in the afternoon breeze, and her purple dress, the one her grandmother had sent from Neiman Marcus, sparkled in the sunlight. Everything was perfect until Dorothy Sinclair, my husband Ryan's mother, stood up and destroyed it all. She didn't just ruin a party. She slapped that beautiful 3-tier cake right off the table, sending it crashing onto our patio. Pink frosting exploded everywhere. Cake chunks scattered across the concrete. The Princess Crown topper I'd specially ordered shattered into plastic pieces. And as my daughter stood there with tears streaming down her face, Dorothy looked her straight in the eye and said words that should never come from a grandmother's mouth. She doesn't deserve happiness. The entire yard went silent. 20 guests suddenly found interesting things to look at in their drinks, on their phones, anywhere but at our family's raw moment of cruelty. My husband Ryan stood frozen, his mouth open but no words coming out. Uncle Gerald had his hand over his face. Aunt Beatrice was gripping her wine glass so tight I thought it might shatter. And me? I was already moving toward Dorothy, ready to say things I'd held back for 7 years, when something extraordinary happened. Hazel wiped her tears with the back of her hand, not in that defeated way children do when they're crushed, but with determination. She walked over to the gift table, picked up her tablet, the expensive one Dorothy had given her last Christmas, with a lecture about proper education, and she turned to face her grandmother. The transformation was remarkable. My 8-year-old daughter, who minutes before had been sobbing over her destroyed birthday cake, now stood with her shoulders back and her chin raised. "Grandma," she said, and her voice was steady as steel, "should I show everyone the video you begged me to delete?" The question hung in the air like electricity before a storm. Dorothy's face went through a series of expressions so fast it was almost comical. Confusion, recognition, then pure panic. Her perfectly manicured hand went to her throat, grabbing the pearl necklace she always wore, the one she claimed had been in the Sinclair family for generations. "What video?" Dorothy's voice cracked. "I don't know what you're talking about, child." But Hazel held that tablet against her chest like armor, and she smiled. Not a mean smile, not vengeful, but confident. Like she finally understood something important about power and truth and standing up for yourself. "The video from last week, Grandma. When you visited while Mom was at work, you said so many interesting things about Mom, about Daddy, about Uncle Gerald, and especially about Grandpa Harold and someone named Richard." Every adult in that backyard suddenly became very interested in what my 8-year-old had to say. Uncle Gerald stepped forward. Aunt Beatrice set down her wine glass. Even our neighbors, the Johnsons, who'd been trying to slip out quietly, stopped at the gate. And Ryan, my conflict-avoidant husband, who'd never once stood up to his mother in 7 years of marriage, finally found his voice. "What video, Hazel?" he asked. But he was looking at his mother. The tablet in Hazel's hands might as well have been a loaded weapon for how Dorothy reacted to it. This woman who'd terrorized our family with her wealth, her connections, her constant threats about inheritance and belonging, was reduced to bargaining with a child. "Sweetheart," Dorothy tried, her voice syrupy fake, "that's private family business. We don't air family matters in public." "Like destroying my birthday cake wasn't public?" Hazel asked. "Like telling me I don't deserve happiness in front of all my friends wasn't public?" And that's when I knew my daughter had learned something valuable. Bullies only understand one language, and it's not kindness or patience or trying harder to please them, it's strength. And in that moment, holding her tablet with rock-steady hands, my 8-year-old daughter was the strongest person in our backyard. The morning of Hazel's party had started with such promise. I'd been up since 5, putting final touches on decorations and checking my lists for the 3rd time. Ryan found me in the kitchen arranging fruit kebabs into perfect rainbow patterns. "You know she'd be happy with just a cake and some balloons," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. But we both knew this party was about more than just Hazel. It was my attempt to finally get Dorothy Sinclair to see us as worthy of her family name. 7 years ago, when Ryan proposed to me at sunset on Lighthouse Beach, I thought I was getting a fairy tale. He was handsome, successful, came from a good family, and most importantly, he looked at me like I hung the moon. What I didn't realize was that marrying Ryan meant marrying into Dorothy's kingdom, where she ruled with an iron fist wrapped in designer gloves. The first time I met Dorothy, she looked me up and down and asked, "Public school teacher?" The way she said it, you'd think I'd told her I wrestled alligators for a living. How quaint. Ryan's father and I had hoped he'd marry someone more, well, ambitious. That should have been my warning, but I was young and in love and convinced I could win her over. When Hazel was born, Dorothy's initial reaction gave me hope. She held my baby girl with something approaching tenderness and declared, "Finally a grandchild. She has the Sinclair eyes." For about 6 months, Dorothy was almost pleasant. She bought expensive nursery furniture, arranged for a baby nurse, and even complimented my choice of middle name for Hazel. I thought motherhood had softened her. The honeymoon ended when Hazel started walking. "She's clumsy," Dorothy observed during a Sunday dinner. "You should enroll her in ballet immediately. We can't have a graceless Sinclair." When Hazel was 3 and preferred finger painting to the fancy dollhouse Dorothy bought, the criticism intensified. "You're letting her become wild, Claire. This is what happens when children aren't given proper structure." But the real breakdown in our relationship came last year. Dorothy had pulled strings to get Hazel tested for Pemberton Academy, her alma mater and the most exclusive private school in the state. When the rejection letter arrived, Dorothy didn't speak to me for a month. Then at Thanksgiving, after 3 glasses of wine, she let loose. If Ryan had married Victoria Ashford like I'd arranged, this never would have happened. The Ashfords have been at Pemberton for 4 generations. Ryan's father, Harold, had been our buffer. A kind man who'd built his fortune in commercial real estate but never forgot his middle-class roots. Harold would squeeze my shoulder at family dinners and whisper, "Don't let her get to you, dear. She wasn't born with money either, you know." When he died 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack, we lost our only ally in the Sinclair family. Dorothy's grief transformed her from difficult to downright cruel. She'd show up unannounced to criticize my housekeeping. She'd take Hazel shopping and return her with stories about how Grandma says my regular clothes are embarrassing. She told anyone who'd listen that Ryan had married down and that I was lucky to have landed him. Uncle Gerald, Ryan's younger brother, tried to help when he could. He'd married Beatrice against Dorothy's wishes, too, though Beatrice came from new money, which was slightly more acceptable than my no-money background. "Just ignore her," Gerald would advise. "She'll move on to another target eventually." But she never did. I was the permanent thorn in Dorothy's perfectly manicured side. Planning Hazel's 8th birthday party became my mission. If I could just throw the perfect party, invite the right people, serve the right food, maybe Dorothy would finally see that I belonged. I studied party planning blogs like they were religious texts. I hired a professional baker for the cake. I even swallowed my pride and asked Dorothy for her input on the guest list. "Well," she'd said, looking at my carefully written names, "I suppose these people will do, though I don't know why you're inviting the whole neighborhood. Hazel should be cultivating friendships with children from better families." But she agreed to come, and that felt like progress. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I kept walking through my mental checklist, wondering what I'd forgotten, what detail Dorothy would find lacking. Ryan told me I was overthinking it, that his mother would behave herself at a child's party. "She loves Hazel," he assured me. "She wouldn't do anything to hurt her." How wrong we both were. Dorothy didn't just hurt Hazel that day. She revealed exactly what she thought of all of us. The party started at 2 o'clock sharp, just as I'd planned. Hazel's friends from school arrived first, their parents complimenting the decorations, while the kids immediately ran toward the bounce house we'd rented. The Johnsons from next door brought their twins, who handed Hazel a handmade birthday card that made her squeal with delight. Everything was falling into place exactly as I'd imagined. Dorothy arrived an hour late, naturally. I watched from the kitchen window as her Mercedes pulled into our driveway, followed by Gerald's BMW. She emerged wearing a